Well, a warm welcome to everyone who has decided to spend a little time with us today talking about PowerApps Portals. So PowerApps Portals have actually been around for quite a few years under a different name, Dynamics 365 Portals. But as Microsoft is doing with many other things that have been part of Dynamics 365, they're trying to kind of pull them out and make them so we can use them separate, even if I'm not a Dynamics 365 user, and that's kind of what the Power Platform is, this thing that just keeps getting more and more features. Now, I have only been working with Portals for about 2 months, but it's a very neat place to dig in, and I've learned a whole bunch of stuff as I'm creating some training material. So what I thought I'd do is, give you as much content as I can over the next hour. So what we're going to look at is quite a few topics for different audiences. So first of all, we'll just kind of talk about PowerApps Portals at a high level. What is the architecture? And then we'll talk about the portal editor. So that's going to be what's used by the content authors. And certainly the whole citizen developer movement in Microsoft kind of promotes that the portal editor, should not be something that requires an HTML or a CSS whiz. Someone who's basically a business user knows the content to add. Now after that, we'll look at the portal management app that gets created whenever you create a portal. So there are going to be more technical people who can manage things like security, and with an understanding of the portal architecture, there's a lot more options to do with customization. When we get to the portal configuration section, that's going to be IT and gearheads, because we're going to talk about things like changing your domain to a custom domain, uploading SSL certificates, being able to integrate authentication with things like LinkedIn and Facebook. And then, of course, my love for development. At the end, we're going to look at the developer side of things. And PowerApps Portals is based on this template language, which is known as Liquid. So we're going to take a quick deep dive into what we can do when we start creating web templates and page content with this Liquid template language. Pretty neat stuff. Okay. Let's start at a high level. What are PowerApps Portals? So they provide a way for you to stand up a website. And that website is something that you could use to target anonymous users, which I have a big SharePoint history. And I remember back in the days where SharePoint provided a foundation for creating public websites with publishing sites. And then as they pushed to the cloud, they all of a sudden changed their mind. And the SharePoint team, didn't want to be in the public website allowing anonymous access business. So it's really nice that the PowerApps team is kind of stepping up and giving me a nice, low-code, no-code solution to stand up a website. And once again, I could target anonymous users, I could target authenticated users, and I could authenticate with just kind of a built-in registration system that portals have. For instance, as users come to your portal, they can register, and basically their name and credentials just gets baked into the database behind the portal. Or we can authenticate through Azure AD or LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter if they already have accounts there. So PowerApps Portals now become, a very strategic way to set up a website, whether you're showing customers things, whether you're dealing with vendors, suppliers, you need someone to be able to authenticate before you supply them with various resources, before you provide forms for them to kind of fill in orders and submit them. Okay, now, as we're going to see, the portal content is going to be managed by business users. So the portal editor is going to be a very important tool, for that first level, of users that, might not be so technical. Okay, now, portal management app is created along with the portal, and we're going to see that's for, doing some more low-level configuration work. And, once again, we have the customization side over in the back end. Now, a PowerApps portal is built on top of the Common Data Service. So you can't go anywhere until you create an environment and it has a CDS database inside of it. Once you've done that, within that portal, I can basically, within that environment, I can create a new portal. Now, through the preview, they've only allowed us to create one portal per environment, and I haven't heard if that is going to change or not moving forward, but just assume that if you want a new portal, you need an environment, it needs a CDS database, And once you have the environment with the CDS database, you can go through the provisioning process. Now, I want to call out one thing up here inside of my slide. So one of the things that you can kind of see is that you have something called ADX. So if you see ADX, that has been the name of the portal infrastructure as it's been in Dynamics 365. So you'll see this little ADX prefix on things like entity names, and that should tell you right away that this thing is part of the portal infrastructure. Okay, now, if you haven't worked with PowerApps in the last month or two, we have a new admin center. So for instance, let's say I go back here and let's go ahead and switch over. And now I'm going to move into the PowerApps Maker portal. I'm just going to go to make.powerapps.com. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down the Site Actions menu. And what you can see as I drop down the Site Actions menu, I go to the Admin Center. So just a few months ago, you used to go to the old PowerApps Admin Center, which you can still get to down here on the left side. But now what you'll see is we have this new center inside here. So let's say that, I've created a, starter portal environment. And now if I go to something like settings, what we can see is that they have a, much richer surface for administrating environments. So all of the Dynamics 365 world is now kind of coming over here, and environments are what contains Dynamics 365 databases. So they've kind of had to put a lot of effort into really kind of polishing this UI surface up. Also note, if you see an environment, for instance, let's say that I go to this environment list right here and I just click on the starter portal environment, and that's this URL. So quite often what's going to happen is that you're going to need a URL to that particular portal. Maybe you want to use the Power BI desktop tool and connect to kind of see the entities in your portal. So this org URL, becomes kind of the identifier. So that's the easy way to be able to get that. Now, let's say that it's time for me to, create a new environment. So there is a new button. And so if I click new, now I can go through the process of filling out this first pane over on the right. So I'll name it starter environment. Note that environments can either be trial or production. And the idea of a trial is it's not going to last forever. So it's going to be used for testing and building things, but it's not going to be used for ongoing production. If you create a trial, after 20 days or so, you feel like you want to go with this into production, you can convert the environment from trial to production. Now, when you create an environment, it also asks you, do you want to create the database? So we're going to say yes, and you have to fill out, what is the language? We'll say US English, and what is the currency, and we'll use US dollar. And once we've done that, we've basically created the environment, and we can basically start working with it. Now, it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to create an environment from what I've been finding lately. But once you've created the environment, now you want to create the portal. So you go back to the environment where you have a CDS database, and then you're going to use the portal from blank template. Now, when you do this, it brings up this dialog, and it wants you to put in a name, and more importantly, it wants you to put in an address. And you put in something which has to be unique, which gets tagged together with PowerAppsPortals.com. So for instance, if you say, I want my address to be bob.powerappsportals.com, someone's already used that, so you have to kind of come up with something that's unique. Once you do that, you click the create, and then the provisioning process starts. Now, when the provisioning process starts, do not stare at your screen, because it's going to be 30 minutes at least, maybe 60 minutes, depending on what's going on. There's a lot that has to happen when you provision a portal. Now, when your portal is finally done, let's kind of go back here, and I'm now going to go back, into the Maker portal. Let's make sure I go to the correct environment. And now if I look at apps, what we're going to see here is that, there's the portal that I just created. And while they create the portal, they create this sidekick for it, which is the portal management app, which is a model-driven app. Now, if I just want to launch the portal, let's go ahead and click on that, and all of a sudden, here is my new portal, and I get this, set of web pages that I can go around in. Okay, kind of interesting. Now, let's talk about when you've created the portal, what actually gets created. So when I create the portal, what I want to do is I want to step back over here and I want to look at the solutions. And what you're going to see is that when you install the portal, they have to add all this functionality. So all these different common data service solutions get installed. And then also down here, if I go look at data and I look at entities, and now if I go ahead and I say look at all entities, and now let's go ahead and sort from A to Z by the name, and you can see all these ADX down here. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is that when the portal solutions get installed, these are now all new entities that the PowerApps architecture uses to capture all kinds of information about pages and page content, page templates, web templates, authentication settings, SSL certificate information. So once again, there's lots of entities that are tracking the data behind a particular portal. Now, if you're using Dynamics 365, you'll find that there's more than just the blank from start template. What I've heard, I can't verify this is true, is that the team is considering adding these templates to just PowerApps without Dynamics 365 licensing, so that might happen. But there is the customer self-service portal, there is the partner portal, there's the employee self-service portal, and the community portal, and all these kind of add a little bit extra, including, possibly pages and entities beyond what's in the portal from blank. But once again, today in the PowerApps environment, if you don't have any type of Dynamics 365 licensing, all you're going to see is the portal from blank. Okay, now, I don't have these slides ready for you at this second, but I'm going to post these slides. So I just kind of wanted to leave a reference for you. So if you kind of look at the different portal templates and kind of see what's the difference in the different features that they have, and what you'll see is that the portal from blank, is the one that kind of gives the base functionality. So if I go ahead and kind of circle this, so it's world ready, multi-language support, portal administration, theming, all this stuff gets built in. But now here's some of the features that some of the other templates will have, that aren't included. Okay. So I'm just going to leave that table there for your reference. Now, let's look at the first editing experience. So we have this thing which is the portal editor. And it's used to add pages, and it's used to add content to pages. And once again, it's designed, for people that don't know HTML, that don't know CSS. They just want kind of a logical, understandable way to start constructing content. Okay, another important thing is that in the portal, we have a set of pages. And a page can be the child to another page, which allows us to create a hierarchy of pages starting with the home page. And as you create a hierarchy of pages, what you're going to see is that in many cases, your navigation just kind of stays in sync. Okay, now let's go back here. And what I want to do is let's go and get rid of this right here. I'm going to go ahead and move back into the editor now. Okay, so let's go back to the correct environment. Let's go look at apps. I'm now going to click on my portal, but not click on the text because that would just launch the portal. I'll select the line, and then we're going to click the edit button. And so this is going to bring up the editor experience. Now, when I bring up the editor, what you're going to see is that it kind of adds content inside here. And then over in the left, you have a couple different tabs. We have the Pages tab, we have the Components tab, we have the Themes tab, and those are the three interesting ones. We also have the Templates tabs, but most of the templates cannot be edited in this mode. Now, let's kind of start with just kind of getting around inside the editor. Let's kind of do some obvious things. So in a brand new portal, I'm going to go ahead and kind of select this image. And what's kind of interesting is that this is not really content on the page. It's really on a template that goes across pages. But still, the portal gives me a way to kind of have an editing experience. Okay, well, let's go ahead and replace that, with something different. We'll go ahead and replace that. Same thing down here. You have this background image, and they've just kind of made it very easy for us, to go through there and be able to, switch out content. Now, also, what you're going to see on pages is these things that are known as components. For instance, here's a text component. If I don't want that text component, I can select it, hit the delete key. Same thing right here. I don't want that text component. Let's go ahead and hit the delete key. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at the hierarchy. So we have a home page, and there's a child, which is services. I can now come down here, and I see under services, we have product A and product B. Note that this allows you to kind of navigate from one page to the next inside there. Okay, so now I'm at the services page. If I want to, go down one more step and see one of the product pages, I'm able to do that. Okay, now let's add a page. And an important thing is, where do you want to add the page? I want to add it as a child to services. So I come down here, I'm going to right-click on services and say add child page. Now, when the page gets created, over here on the right-hand side, they have something where you can put in the name of the page and the partial URL. So let's say that I call this one, product C, just because I'm very original. And let's see if I can spell correctly. Okay, now what's interesting about this is when you tab out of name, it automatically starts saving. So it took me a while to kind of get used to this, but let's say I make a change here, I tab out and it starts saving, and then I start updating this field, and what happens is when it's done, it throws my work away. So when you tab out of one, look at the thing that says saving, wait till it's saved, and now I can come down here and, what is going to be my page URL? I'll basically have a friendly URL that is something like, product C. I tab out of that. So the editor takes, a little bit of getting used to. Now, you have pages, and pages have these little placeholders that are kind of created from the underlying templates. So here's the page title. Not every page template allows me to switch that out. If I come down here, here's a component, and let's say that I get rid of this text component because I want to do something a little bit more creative. So now we're going to go back up to components. And one of the things about components is that they're not just for text and images, they're for layout. Now, so let's say we come down here and we put in a 2-column section. And now over on this column right here, what do I want to do? Let's add another component. So let's go back here. Let's take an image component, and we're going to add the image component inside here. Can you do it, Ted? Okay, one more time. We will try to add the image component inside. Okay, if it doesn't work, I'll have to get one of my young children in here to perform that computer act that I can't do. But now we've added this in. And while I can upload another image, maybe we already have images, that we've uploaded, that will work just fine inside here. Okay, and now we'll come back over here and we'll add another text component inside here. And, now we can start adding more text inside. And once again, a little bit tricky to work with the first time you work with it. But, once your motor skills kind of pick up, working with this, I think you'll find it's pretty easy. And it's certainly a lot easier than, learning HTML. Okay. Now, last thing I want to point, after I've done something, there's this kind of technique about just kind of clicking on the white outside, and that kind of triggers the saving action. So there's not really a save button. Now, if I want to kind of see what my work looks like, notice that up top here we have a Browse Website. So let's go ahead and click on Browse Website, and the idea is that that starts up the portal. Now, a very important thing about what we just looked at right here is that the portal uses caching. meaning that when it generates a page and it has to kind of run code to do that, it's not going to continue to do that. If 100 people want that same page, it's able to cache the page in memory and push it out. And caching, is a godsend in a production environment because it's the benefit of, scaling and just giving me better performance. But caching, is the arch enemy of you as a developer because you're going to change something. And if the caching doesn't, basically allow the new content to show, that's a problem. So one special thing about this Browse Website button is it basically handles the clearing the cache. Now, let's go down here. Here's something that we didn't have during the earlier preview that just kind of became available. So behind a portal, they use Bootstrap. And let me also say it's not just Bootstrap, but they use Bootstrap 3. And while in theory you could kind of change to a different version, I would strongly encourage you at this point just to stay with Bootstrap 3 and not try to move to Bootstrap 4. Just finding different places where you don't have control over the HTML and, it's already using Bootstrap 3. All the portals use Bootstrap 3. So the key point, embrace Bootstrap 3. But let's say that I want to come through here and I open up the theme and I want to kind of do something quick just to kind of show. So let's say that I put in a body tag and we say something like background color equals, and let's do something loud so we'll see what it is. And then maybe I'll say margin top equals 100 px. And so let's go ahead and save my work. And now that I saved my work, let's go ahead and click Browse Website. And, without Browse Website, if I just kind of went back to the portal and refreshed the page, we'd see that that would be a problem. So you can kind of see that, even though my HTML, isn't a smart way to, or my CSS isn't really great, I just wanted to kind of show you something quickly to kind of show how you can make changes, how you then save, and then how you click on Browse Website, to basically, see the changes that you have made inside there. Okay. And, notice that I put in product C, and, product C allows us to, have a new page. It just kind of fits, into the navigation. Okay. Let's go back. And let's say I go back to that page, product C. So you have different pages, and behind pages, we have page templates. So notice that when you create a page, or if you go to another existing page, you could switch back and forth, between, all the different templates that are there. And building templates is not really a end user thing, nothing you would do in the editor. At the end of the session, we're going to kind of see, what would be the approach if I wanted to kind of take these templates that come out of the box, and basically replace it with something different by having my own templates inside. Okay. So what I wanted to kind of show there was just how we get around, inside of the portal editor. And I think the portal editor is not overly complicated because Microsoft's trying to leave the experience very simple. But I think Microsoft is going to be putting a lot of energy and a lot of investment into the portal editor, because as much as us technical people, like to think we're in charge, it's really going to be, a lesser technical crowd that ultimately will be in charge of the content in whatever portal we stand up. So having that, very strong story, with the low-tech editor gets to be an important part. And we kind of saw that it bases content authoring around this idea of components. And so when someone takes a 2-column section and drags it in, they're just kind of putting divs with Bootstrap 3 styling in place and kind of hiding the HTML and CSS requirements, for someone to kind of build a website that not only looks good in the browser, but it's also responsive. Another thing that you have to point out here is that, as we look at our portal, what's going to happen, when all of a sudden someone takes that and, sees it on a mobile device. We want to make sure that, the responsive design is good. And once again, that's something that just kind of comes out of the box with the portal infrastructure. Okay, I've talked about themes. I've talked about kind of seeing your changes in the portal. So now let's kind of move past the portal editor experience and talk about this thing called the Portal Management app. So along with your portal, when the provisioning is done, there's going to be a model-driven app, which is the Portal Management app. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're just going to launch it. Note that this is not an app that you're going to open in edit mode because someone else built it and it's locked down as far as what you're able to see inside there. So you're just a regular user of this application. Let's go back, and back here in PowerApps, let's kind of go back to our environment here. And as I start this up, let's go to Apps, and there's the Portal Management app. Let's go ahead and fire it up. You're going to see that it just kind of gives you a very simple way to edit the underlying entity data that the portal is based on. So for instance, up here, the first thing I can do is I can open the CDS record, for my website object. What is the name? Let's go ahead and change that, to Ted's portal. And in addition to that, the website gets to, specify what is the primary header template, that's used across different pages. Now, here in the slides, what I wanted to do is kind of show you the different entities that you can get to. So the Portal Management app gives you the ability to get to the website, to get to the page templates, and you can either manage or create them there. There's redirects. So if someone comes in on path A, you want to redirect them to path B. There's site markers, which kind of allow you to kind of take bookmarks at different places in the site. There's site settings. A little bit later when we talk about how to configure authentication for LinkedIn and Facebook, those are examples of what you go to site settings for. There's website bindings that basically says, what is the custom URL? Okay. And then we also have content. And for content, we have web pages and we have web templates. Both of those have content that we write inside there. Note that a web template just has content. A web page has content that is localized. So every time you look at a web page, you're going to see that there's no content at the high level, but you have to go into, the English version to see what's inside there. Okay, we also have web set links. So we kind of have this set of objects that allow us to define navigation. And I can create a web set link. So I want to put a couple different links down in my footer or in some random page. Okay. We also have entity forms and entity lists. I want to call those out. So one of the neat things that portals allow you to do is to take CDS data. And so a little bit later, I'm going to kind of show that I have a custom portal that has my own custom entities. And what you're able to do is on your website, you can either expose lists or data entry forms, and they're just going to be the forms that are in the back of your entity. So the portal kind of gives you a way to kind of formalize being able to take entity data and surface it, inside of a portal. Okay, we also have security. So do you want to have your entire portal available anonymous access? Do you want to have the entire portal locked down and require authentication? Do you want to kind of have a mix and match where people can come and see a set of anonymous pages, but then they have to authenticate before they're going to see more? And if you have a custom entity, how are you going to make it so that anonymous users can see it? You're going to have to give away permissions. How are you going to make it so an authenticated user or even an anonymous user is able to add a new record, into one of your custom entities? So we have a set of security entities, that allow us to configure that type of information. And then there's some things for if you want to have ads or polls, there's some functionality that's kind of built into the core framework for those. Okay. Now, let's say that, within my portal, let's go back here, and we have the website. Now, we also have page templates. So here's this set of page templates right here. And so what you're going to see is that if I go to a web page, let's go back to our product C web page that I was playing with before. And what is the page template? So here I could say, let's get rid of that page template and point to a different page template. If I start typing inside here, or if I click on search, it will basically show me some of the other templates that I can load inside there. Okay, and I'm kind of struggling to come up with a page template name. Okay, so back here you can kind of see that one of the page template names, I thought it was going to fill that in for me. But let's say I want to go to full page. Okay, let's try the demo one more time. Come on, Ted, you can do it. So we come back here and we basically say, now I want to go to the, full page. There's the template. I've kind of changed it inside. Now, every page points to one page template. Now, if I look at page templates, let's go back up here and find, where the page templates are. You're going to find that if I look at a page template, it has something behind it, which is basically the web template. Okay, that's not a good one because not all of them have web templates. So page templates are either going to be a rewrite or a web template. So let's go to a different one here, just so I can kind of show you an example. So, let's say that we look at this child page with links. And so what you can see is that every single page points to a web template, and every web template, let me say it one more time. Every page points to a page template, and every page template points to a web template. So some web templates are full pages, yet many web templates are just part of pages. So when we get to web templates, what you're going to see, let's go down to have our first look at web templates, and let's look at one of these web templates. Like, here is the web template for the footer. And you can see that we have some code in HTML. If you want to link to JavaScript here, we have a little teaser of this language we're going to introduce in a little bit, which is called the Liquid Template Language. Okay. But what you'll see is that to really kind of get good at the content, you have to understand the relationship between web templates and page templates and web pages. Some of the other things to note here is, let's say that I want to go to the Portal Admin Center. So back here, what I'm going to do with my portal is, in my portal, I'm going to click this down and I'm going to go to Settings. When I go to Settings, there is now Administration. And what's confusing is that this is not the administration page for the environment. There's a different administration page for that. This is the administration page for your portal within the environment. Now, when I first get to this page right here, what you're going to see is that there's information, so every portal has a GUID that identifies it. But there's also this thing where when you create a portal, it's initially created in trial mode. And so you have to take your portal and convert it within 30 days. So let's say I go ahead and start this conversion process. And so once we've kind of gotten through this process of converting, what you're going to see is that a lot more configuration options appear. So for instance, while you're in trial mode, you can't set a custom URL. You can't upload an SSL certificate. And Microsoft has certain motivations for starting everything in trial. And also realize that the portal mode of trial or production is not the same thing as the environment mode. So there's two separate things. So you can have an environment that's trial versus production, and then also your portal can be trial versus production. And then the last thing is that you cannot convert your portal from trial to production if your underlying environment is still in trial. You have to convert that to production too. Okay, there will be a quiz following the presentation. Now, once we've kind of gone through that process and we have moved to production mode, there's this new property which is called Portal Development Status. So this is for basically developers, and the idea is that it starts at prototype, but you can move it through development, test, user acceptance training, and live. Okay. Also, let's look at portal actions. So here, I can't convert this portal because this portal is in a trial environment. Okay, no problem, because I created a second portal here, and that's my production portal. And so for the production portal, I've already gone through the process of moving it to production. So once again, let's go to this portal. Let's go to settings. Let's go to administration. And now this is going to kind of push me into the portal admin center, but this time, we have a portal that's been moved to production. So you can see I can set this now, we're undergoing development. If I go over here to portal actions, you're going to see that there is add a custom domain name. So if you click on that, it's going to bring you through the process of uploading your SSL certificate, and you have to have an SSL certificate, in order to set a custom domain name. And some of the other things we have, inside here are basically links to set up your SharePoint integration, links to set up Power BI integration, so you can start doing things like embedding Power BI reports and dashboards, into your portal pages. Okay. Now, if I move back, the last thing I want to mention here is, let's go back, and this is going to be in the portal management. So I'm going to go into portal management, and into portal management, I'm going to go to site settings. So there's all kinds of different settings that get set, but you can see that under auth settings, you have an app ID and an app secret for Facebook. You have a consumer key and a consumer secret for LinkedIn. So there's a process for you to go and create a developer account at these sites like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And then as you create an application for your developer account, you'll have IDs and passwords or secrets that you can bring back and put them inside here. Now, so one big feature here, is the ability to have users authenticate so you know who they are, but yet they can just leverage their LinkedIn account or their Facebook account or their Twitter account. Now, I learned how to do this from one of my co-MVP brethren, Brian Knight, and so I kind of wanted to point out that he's got two great videos that are on YouTube. So for instance, if I go ahead and click this link right here, this will take me over to where I can kind of watch Brian take about 10 minutes to kind of step me through. Go to LinkedIn. Here's how you create the app. Here's the data you get. Here's how you put it inside there. Okay, now what I want to do is I kind of want to finish up by kind of looking at a portal that I've been creating. And so I kind of put it at a custom domain at www.tedpattison.net. And it'll kind of allow me to kind of now show you some of the things I've done on the development side. Now, let's go back here. And so I'm going to close a bunch of things down. And so now that I've closed those down, let's now kind of move over to my portal here. And inside of my portal, let's go ahead and open the portal up just to kind of see what it looks like. So here's an example of something where I've created common data service entities to start storing our classes and basically the courses that we use to teach our classes. So once again, this is going to be a data-driven website where I can come get information. I have a schedule. We're going to kind of have some markup code that's going to build out, these particular links inside here. Now, if I go back here, and now we go back to my portal, and we go to settings, and we come back upside here, what you're going to see is that I've kind of already gone through the process of setting a custom domain. And, as you do that, part of the work, involves you uploading a SSL certificate. So if you've never done this before, you have to kind of go through the process of creating a CSR, submitting it to a third-party authority, getting them to give you the certificate, creating the password-protected PFX file, and uploading that. And once you've done that, well, the next thing that you have to do is you have to get DNS settings right. So for instance, my PowerApps portal if I come back here and we kind of start it up, let's go ahead and kind of start up my portal. It has a base URL of tedpatterson.powerappsportals.com. So what you have to do is you have to go and create a CNAME for www.tedpatterson.net so that when it gets resolved, it doesn't point to an IP address. It points to this DNS URL right here. But once you've gone through that, now I should be able to say www.tedpatterson.net, and it's basically going to take me to the exact same portal inside there. Now, as we start working with portals and we start doing development, there is this programming language which is known as Liquid. Now, Liquid is not something that Microsoft just created. Liquid was created by a company named Shopify, over 10 years ago, and it's currently used by, hundreds of websites and independent software vendors. And one of the strengths of Liquid is its ability for you to write scripts that basically are able to take data from a database and generate HTML on a web page. And another thing about Liquid is that it gives you what you need, but doesn't give you things that would make it dangerous. So Liquid, is, used by a lot of different vendors because it gives the authors, lots of opportunity, to work with the data, but it doesn't open up security holes. Now, you can go and follow this URL and just go to the Shopify documentation. Let's look at a couple basics. So when we're working with Liquid, you can reference an object, and you can basically take the object and just have it display its data to the page by using the double curly braces on each side. Okay, now there's also tags. So tags have a open curly brace %, and so down there you can see, if user is an object, and if user is blank, it doesn't do anything. If the user is not blank, there's currently a user, so let's take the username. Okay, now also, here's just a quick list of objects. You have the page, you have the param, you have the request. A little call out, we have this great object which is called now, but lots of people get burned and don't understand that now was the time where we created the page that we put into cache. And then if we serve that page up for an hour, now doesn't say now, it says, basically something in the past. So pages get cached, so just kind of be cautious about using now. But as you go down this list, you want information about the current page. What's its URL? Did someone pass web parameters? There's a params object. If I want to figure out who the user is, if I want to figure out what is the website title or what is the website URL, it all just is right there instantly available to me because they're all available as Liquid objects. Now, there is a PowerApps specific documentation that we could use. So for instance, if I click on here, and up here in docs.microsoft.com, is where I would go to kind of start learning how to, work with templates and be able to work with them. Okay. Now, let's say that I have data and I want to be able to manipulate it. So there's this concept of filters. And the idea of a filter is that you have some object, in this case, the first one is a string, and we want to append something to it. So the way to use filters is you use the pipe, and then you use the name of the filter, colon, and then some value. And so you can kind of see that, in the first case, we just use append. In the second case, we first of all use capitalize, and then we use prepend. But because it's a markup language, there's all kinds of neat filters to do things like take a line break and change it into a BR for my HTML. Now, here's an example of using Liquid to actually create data on a web page. So what we could do is we could say all products, and there's going to be a collection, and as I go through each product I can take the title, and then I'll use the where clause or the where filter to filter my records, and I see a smaller set. Now, I've got about 15 minutes left. So what I want to do is let's kind of start by kind of seeing how I built out this solution. So first of all, everything that you do when it comes to custom entities, if you're not already building them, inside of a CDS solution, you should. And the idea is that as I start building custom entities and Canvas apps and model-driven apps, I want to be able to take them and export them and import them somewhere else. So everything, is going to be created inside the context of a single solution here. Now, we have a course, and the idea of a course is, I need to capture what is the course name, what's the course code, who's the description, and in addition to that, we have classes, which is a delivery of a course. So here I can have a class, I can say what course that we're going to have inside there, and then after you build your entities, how are you going to manage the data? Obviously, you're going to create a model-driven app. So here's an example of this model-driven app that we're going to create for our content. So for instance, if I need to manage my courses, I could come back over here, and now we can kind of open up this one particular course, and you can kind of see that, we have things like option sets, descriptions, prerequisites inside there. And once we have a list of courses in my app, let me switch over to kind of the class management. Now it gets to be very easy when I want to schedule a new class, just to pick one of the courses to kind of go down and kind of schedule the days inside there. Okay, so I want to kind of give you kind of a quick look at the data inside here. And one last thing that I want to do before we kind of switch over to code mode is that if I go back here, and I'm going to go back into data, I'm going to go back, look at entities, and I'm going to look at this entity called class. Because class is one of the times that I deliver a course. And I'm going to go to relationships here. And what I wanted to kind of see is that when you create a lookup column, there's now kind of a relationship between these two different entities. And what's going to be important is I'm going to need that relationship name in some code that I'm going to write, which is kind of why I pointed it out. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this wonderful tool, which is called the XRM Toolbox. So the XRM Toolbox is something that one of the MVPs in our community created. And while the portal management app gives you some ability to kind of get to the content in a page or to get to a web template, this tool is just awesome. If you use it, all of a sudden you start seeing, how well it works. So what the tool is going to do for us is it creates connections. So if I say I want to connect, you can see I've already got connections to many of the different portals that I'm working with. And the XRM Toolbox is really just a shell for plugins, but it manages connections, and then plugins get to use those connections. So the one connection or the one plugin I like is the portal code editor. Let's kind of open that thing up. So now that we open this up right here, it's going to take a second, and now we're going to load the items in. So this plugin knows what are the particular things that have code that I can change. So two things that are important is one, we have web pages. So for instance, here is the schedule page, and you can see that for pages, you always have content that is, basically localized. But now here is my particular code. Now let's go back here, and what I want to do is kind of show how I would typically, work with this. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go back to my portal, and I'm going to go back to my portal, and I'm going to open up the editor. And there's really only one reason I'm going to open up this editor, and it's because it has the button to clear the cache. What we're kind of hoping soon is that the cache clearing need, which wasn't here until just a couple weeks ago, is now obvious. So the team is going to provide an API entry point. So I'm kind of hoping soon you won't have to do, what I'm about to do here. Okay, but let's go to the schedule page. So I go to the schedule page and I kind of see what it looks like. After a second, it should change. Now, back here, let's go ahead and kind of make a change. So for instance, if I now do a H2, and with my H2, we'll go back here and we'll do something like, hi, Mom. And so Control S is what saves my work. So now it's saved, but it's not pushed back. Control U is what actually writes my change, back to that particular page content or that particular template. And now that I've done that, let's go back here and let's kind of click on, browse website. And so, what we should see here is that I should see my content. Hey, there's Hey Mom inside there. And once I've kind of tested my work, I shut the page down. Let's go back here. Let's go ahead and kind of get rid of that. And one more time, Control S, Control U, is what gives you the save and pushback. And then back here, being able to kind of hit browse and instantly say your changes, that gets to be, the important part here. Okay, now if I go just a little bit further here, let's kind of dig into what we're building. So here, there's this idea of a entity view. And so while you can go to the Components tab in the editor and you can add entity lists and entity forms, and that's great stuff. But if you are willing to work with Liquid, you have so much more control to build your UI experience from the ground up. So here, entity view, logical name, that is the name of my entity. And then that is the name of one of my views. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send it to a filter and say order by CPT start. And now we're going to have a for loop that's going to create one of these row template items, for each one of these scheduled classes that we have. So here's an example of item CPT start, and I put the date inside there. For instance, over here, you can kind of see, what are the date formats that I want to work with. If I go ahead and kind of put the fourth M inside there, Control S and Control U, basically do my changes. Let's now kind of go back and, see, do I like what I just did right there? Does it look good, or do I want to go back, to the smaller particular code inside there? Okay. But now you're kind of getting the point of, being able to, make changes to be able to work with this language. Now, when I look at this audience, there's this issue where you have a course and there are many classes. So this is a class that we're looking at, not the course, but the many side needs to go back to the one side object and do some lookups. So what we're able to do here is that if I have, this need to get the audience, I can say item, and here, I've got class objects. Each one represents a record from the class table. So now down here, we're going to say CPT, item, and then we refer to that relationship, which then lets you reach into the one side. And here I have an option set, so I'll grab the label for that inside there. Okay. Now, if I look at something like a course page, let's go back here. And if there was one course I would try to sell you, it would be Building Business Solutions with Power Apps and Flow, because here's the one where we're adding Portal into the lab exercises for the course. But now let's go back here, and this is not just for one page. This is going to be a web template. So back here, here is my CPT course page. And what you'll see is that every single time we have a new course, we add a page, and we basically point that page to a particular record in here. And the way that we're able to do that is, let me get up to the top of this right here. What is the course code? So what I'm doing is I'm basically pulling the course code, out of the URL. Now I'm trying to make this as generic as possible. And then once I have that, I can basically do a lookup against the courses and find that course. And once I do that, now I just have a course object that I can use. So course.cpt name. And you can kind of see that now I can start filling out my particular page here. And I want to have the upcoming offerings. So when we looked at schedule, we kind of saw how to go from the many side to the one side. Now, if I go to a particular course, we're kind of having to see the opposite right there. So if I go to a particular course here, one course has many different class deliveries. So what you can see here is that if I go down a little bit further inside here, okay, stop moving around. What you can see is that let's go to the logical name. So now we're just kind of doing a query against classes, but where? And I can basically pull the course code out inside there. And once I have the course code, I can then kind of quickly create the list of classes inside. Okay. Now, one more item that I want to point out here, because it's kind of new and kind of exciting, is that inside of PowerApps, we now have, if I look inside here, let's go back to this portal, and we have data flows. So what are data flows? Data flows are the same thing we have in Power BI as far as having Power Query to be able to pull data back. But what's nice about data flows in PowerApps is that when you run a data flow, you can push the data into the CDS. So one of the things that I've done is I've figured out, how to call into Eventbrite, which is where we store our classes. And I can then return a query of all the different classes, including the Eventbrite URLs. And the idea is that I don't have to populate classes. I can just run a query and kind of populate them from the live data that lives somewhere else. And at the end of the day, what are we able to do? We're able to get these registration URLs inside here. So when you kind of click on one of these, we're able to kind of figure out, where to redirect you, to register for a course. Yet I don't now have to go and copy and paste these URLs, from Eventbrite, into the Common Service Database. It can be handled automatically. Okay, so hopefully today's seminar is giving you some good information about working with PowerApps Portals. At least kind of showed you how to get started and showed you some of the possibilities. Certainly it is a huge topic, and I know I'm going to be digging down hard for the next year or two, just trying to find all the different things that you can do. And it's a little bit frustrating to me because all these darn people in Dynamics have a 2-year head start on using this portal framework, and I'm just trying to catch up with them. Anyway, one last plug here for Critical Path Training. So at Critical Path Training, if you like this style of training and you like doing lots of hands-on labs, please come visit us. And you can kind of see the courses on the portal that I showed as a demo. You can also see them at criticalpathtraining.com. And, as far as courses, we have Power Apps and Flow courses. We have Power BI courses. We have some for citizen developers, some for professional developers. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for spending an hour with us today. I'm hoping that, what we talked about enlightens you a little bit and gives you some, a sense of the opportunities that exist working with portals.